It's noisy. Not that that is anything new. The entire city is noisy, and this bar happens to be a louder area than most. Your ears burn a bit with the buzz, but you're used to tuning out senseless background babble. The bar is busier than usual, and it's a chore getting across the floor to the counter. Every time you brush against someone, you have to fight the urge to flinch away. Personal space is something you enjoy, particularly when you're surrounded by people who would potentially kill you if they knew what you were. It doesn't matter that most of these people are tainted themselves. Your kind isn't loved by anyone. You finally make it to the bar after plowing through far more people than you would have liked to. It's a hassle getting a stool, and you have to stare down some weedier-looking guys through your shades, but soon you're leaning on the counter and waving down the barista further down the line. She glides forward, wiping her hands on a rag as she looks at you with appraising green eyes.
Mr. Strider.
She walks, stopping in front of you, and placing her hand on the counter, she raises an eyebrow.
I believe I have informed you several times that you are underage and therefore not allowed in our establishment, yet you persist in coming.
You smirk at her, and her black lips downturn into a slight frown.
You want to play this game? We can. But babe, you and I both know you got better things to do than engage in a verbal battle while you undeniably lose due to myself being an epicon and master of local swag and you being nothing more than a verbiage happy snarky broad.
Her eyebrow gives a barely perceptible twitch, but other than that she seems unfazed. Her poker face is almost as good as yours. Almost.
Very well, Mr. Strider. A beer it is.
Relief rushes through you, because despite your bravado, you really aren't up to any verbal duels and just really need a beer. Because you're stressed as fuck.
Thanks, Kanaya.
You say it with more grace and actual gratefulness than you usually allow yourself to convey. Her lips curl into a slight smile, revealing thin fangs protruding from her upper gums.
Just this once.
Her name is Kanaya Mariam, and she is tall and slender, with oddly styled black hair and judgmental, assessing green eyes. Her skin is sallow, looking discolored and almost gray. It gives her a haunted, almost dead look, accented by the black lips and the strange golden rim round her irises. Kanaya is a troll, obvious from both the discoloration and the black lips and gold-rimmed eyes. It's rare for a troll to be so out in the open, to not hide themselves or at the very least try and conceal their differences and blend in as a human. But Kanaya is as classy as they come, and holds a great deal of pride. You have no doubt that she would waltz down Main Street with her head held high, not caring about the hateful glances or the death threats being thrown at her. She'd probably be carrying her chainsaw, but still.
Here you are, Mr. Strider.
She returns with a half-glass of dark yellow liquid. You look at the small cup in her hand, and your face downturns into a scowl, eyes glaring at the woman behind the counter.
Are you serious? Are you actually fucking serious? What is this kitty-sized piece of shit you were trying to give me? Kanaya, girl, I thought we were friends.
You seem troubled.
She sets the glass in front of you and then stares with those scrutinizing eyes.
Hence your apparent desire to drink away your stress. I deduce that it would be better for you to be relatively sober to face whatever is causing those dreadful frown lines on your skin.
My troubles don't care whether or not I'm stoned or smashed.
Because fuck, was this actually a good idea? Yes, he's miserable and depressed and needs to get out of the fucking house, but maybe you shouldn't have brought him here. Maybe it'll be too much for him. Maybe... The door opens and you automatically recognize the faltering step, hearing it through all the other noise in the bar. The gate is more graceful than it used to be, but he's taken to doing this weird shuffling thing, and you can always hear his shoes and pant hem scraping against the floor. On top of that is the way his breathing is forcibly quiet, as if he is trying to hide himself away. You turn your head away from Kanaya and towards the door, your eyes flickering about to try and find what your ears are telling you is there. Most of the people are sitting down now, but the room is small and all the dark-colored jackets and scruffy clothes are blending together into one solid mass. The darkening effect of your shades isn't helping, but like hell you're going to take them off. You find yourself wishing that John still wore obnoxiously bright clothing like he used to. Like that adorable sweater with the overlong derpy hood that he'd run around in when you were younger, giggling like mad and pretending he could.
Dave?
You jump slightly in your chair and turn, tilting your head back to look behind you. Against all odds, he has managed to sneak up on you and is standing hesitantly by your shoulder. He's dressed in all gray. Gray sweater, gray jacket, gray jeans, and his hood is up. You can just barely see the glimmer of bright blue within the darkness of the cowl, and like always, you're momentarily taken aback by how huge and how fucking blue his eyes are without his glasses. You swallow once and offer him a slight nod.
Hey,
Definitely not the best thing to say to your emotionally unstable, depressed friend. But damn it, you are a Strider, and you are as outwardly apathetic as fuck. You don't want him to pick up on your own nervousness and get more worried and anxious and freaked out than he already is. Though he can probably tell just from the way you're tapping your foot and sitting hunched over like you're about to pounce on something. He's become pretty good at noticing the subtle things that give away what you're thinking and how you're feeling. The super rainbow drinker vision he's been given probably helps.
Is this the right place?
He's shifting from foot to foot and looking about nervously,
fucking wondering that myself.
is what you think.
Yeah, man. This is the sweet grill I was going on about. Aren't you just digging this ill scene with all the cigarette smoke and wasted bums draping themselves all over you?
Sarcasm probably wasn't the best way to go, and you mentally kick yourself when he hunches over.
Not really.
Your stomach twists uncomfortably and you turn back around, downing your stupid kitty-sized beer in one gulp. Fuck sobriety. You've never been a drunk day in your life. And you need the buzz if you want to get through this night with your poker face and stoic attitude intact. You feel way too much like crying already. It's not a good start to what's clearly going to be a hella difficult evening.
That's because you're not a licensed master in the art of cool like I am.
You answer his terse response with more of your usual snark, now that you have some warmth in your veins. You can't tell if he cracks a smile or not. It's hard knowing what breaks through that shell of depression and what just makes it worse. He's more sensitive, so sometimes your long, ironic, metaphor-heavy rants hit him in places you don't intend them to. But at the same time, when you're quiet and going out of your way not to step on any emotional toes, he gets completely distraught. You're pretty much the only constant in his life right now, and he hates when you act differently around him. The line between what'll make him crack a smile and what'll add another chip to his over-damaged heart is a thin one. And despite your mad acrobatic skills and natural poise, you don't think you're doing a very good job walking it.
I apologize for interrupting.
John jumps and you whip your head around, back towards the troll woman behind the counter, the one you'd momentarily forgotten about. God, your awareness has gone out the window. Maybe you really should stop drinking. People are sneaking up on you from all sides, and the egg derp and a fashion-obsessed barista, no less. If Bro were here, he'd be raising his eyebrow in ironic disapproval and somewhat unironic amusement. And then he'd probably kick your ass. John seems a bit startled as well, his hood falling back a bit as he turns towards Kanaya with wide blue eyes. Her eyes flicker from you to him and narrow in a barely perceptible look of scrutiny. John flinches and you immediately tense up, shifting your body so that you've placed yourself in the path of Kanaya's view.
Sorry, babe. I know he's gorgeous and the choice of men around these parts unlimited, but he's off limits, so cast that green-eyed gaze somewhere else, capiche?
There is the slightest hint of steel in your voice, and you see Kanaya tense, her eyes flickering back to you in annoyance. Her poker face might be good, and she exudes the perfect demeanor of apathy, but she is nosy and curious. You've brought a newcomer to her bar, someone she doesn't know anything about. You guess you can understand her worry. This isn't the place to be bringing in random stooges off the street. Despite its outward appearance, this is something of a classy establishment, and you do sort of understand where Kanaya is coming from with her curiosity. But her staring is freaking John the fuck out, and that's not something you can allow. She seems to get the message, because her gaze softens, and she steps back a bit.
My sincerest apologies.
Her eyes flickering back to John, but less intense and demanding.
I was merely curious as to the identity of your new companion. He is an individual that I have not had the privilege of encountering. Perhaps it would be prudent for you to introduce the two of us.
You can hear the underlying line of, "Who the fuck did you bring into my bar, Strider?" And you can't resist a smirk.
This is John.
You gesturing back towards your best friend with a jerk of your head.
He's my lover. We'll be eloping in a couple of days, so I thought it'd be best to—
Dave!
John grabs your jacket. His head falls back a bit, and his face emerges from the darkness of the cowl, all bright blue eyes and ridiculous overbite. Your smirk softens into something else for a moment, before you re-employ your patented poker face and smack him lightly on the forehead.
What's this, Egbert? Are you calling off our shotgun wedding after I've already gotten my dress? The nerve of you!
You give him the most scandalized expression you can with your glasses hiding your eyes, and he flushes red before lowering his eyes to the ground.
Please, Dave.
He gives a small shake of his head. He seems to have noticed the displacement of his hood, because he pulls it forward and sinks into it, hiding himself away again. Something in your chest twists painfully and you fall silent, clutching the fabric of your pant leg into a fist. Once upon a time, John would have engaged you in a ridiculous banter wherein you owned his ass in a battle of who can be the most awkward and make the most shitty metaphors. Now you're lucky that you got a response from him at all.
I suppose it is accurate to assume that this boy is a good friend of yours, Dave.
Kanaya's voice snaps you out of your stupid, painful thoughts, and you incline your head towards her.
My best bosom bud forever.
Your eyes flutter to the side to see if he's reacted. But John is back to hiding away inside his hood, all curled in on himself, with his shoulders bunched up. A surge of something that you refuse to acknowledge as heartbreak, and immediately reassess as anger rushes through you. You have to fix this. You can't let this go on. In this fucked up world that you live in, the one thing that should never be messed with is John Egbert. He's too kind, and too sweet, and too everything this shitty city is not. He needs to stay sweet, and keep being a goofy prankster, and never be depressed or so fucking quiet. You've been looking for ways. Ever since he was attacked, you've been looking for ways to help him. You can't reverse the change, though God, you were still pathetic enough to ask a few people down here if they knew of any miracle cures. You can't stop the craving, though you've been satisfying it as much as your body is able to. But you can't fix the damage that's been done. You can hide his eyes, but it's obvious just from the way his personality has changed and the way he walks that he's been infected. He can't live among normal humans anymore. He's lost all of his friends, and though his dad didn't kick him out, their interactions are now strained and awkward and just really painful. You've seen some. They make you wince. The worst part of the entire thing is that you know it's your fault. Your very existence thrives upon bringing misfortune upon others. You thought you beat it. So many years of being close to John and not having him fall down staircases or get hit by cars had you thinking that maybe your bro was right and the whole curse was a myth, that you could be close to someone and they wouldn't get hurt. But the worst thing possible happened, and now you know that your shitty fortune-stealing ass has ruined your best friend's life. Every so often, when you're alone in your room, your eyes drift over to the gun that sits on your dresser. Every so often, you wonder if you did the right thing. If your original thought, that he was better off dead than living this life, was correct. But that's something that will drive you crazy if you dwell on it. You didn't kill John, and now he's a rainbow drinker and miserable and alone, and you need to help him. You need to fix it. That's right. Except for you, John's alone. Something he's never been before. Despite being a doofus, his warm nature made people flock to him, and he had a lot of friends. As much as you wish you were enough, you aren't. John needs people in his life. He needs others to help him realize that he's not a hopeless monster.
It is a pleasure to make your acquaintance, John.
After an awkward silence, the realization that John isn't going to respond further becomes apparent, and that you're surprisingly lacking in witty remarks.
My title of address is Kanaya Merriam, and I am partially in charge of this establishment. While we are usually rather strict about unknown persons, any comrade of Dave is welcome.
Kanaya's lips curl into the barest of smiles, and her fangs glint slightly in the light. You see John flinch slightly and you stiffen. Unlike you, John has spent pretty much all his life on the right side of society, and grew up fearing and hating trolls. In the years that your friendship has grown, you've tried several times to convince him that not all trolls are bad. That most of them are just grumpy and beaten down. They look scarier with their discolored skin, fangs, and claws, but aside from a century of oppression and generations worth of resentment and pain, they aren't that different from humans. He had always given you looks of incredulity, and even though it irritated you that he never took what you said seriously, you guess you couldn't blame him. Every day on the news there are a flood of stories about atrocities committed by taints, especially trolls. The only image that the media paints of trolls and taints in general is a violent, monstrous one. Since he's turned, you've been trying doubly hard to convince him that's not true, especially since that bad image now applies to him. You can tell that he's still having trouble believing you, though, about trolls and about himself. Especially about himself.
Thank you, Miss Miriam.
He's still cringing away from her a bit. Kanaya raises an eyebrow and turns her gaze towards you slightly. You maintain your stoic expression. You're not going to embarrass him by making excuses for his skittishness. But you really, seriously, really hope that he can get over his distrust of trolls, because he's going to be meeting a lot more in the coming times. Actually, the coming minutes, if you have anything to say about it.
Now that we've all been introduced,
You lean down on the bar counter and adjust your sunglasses.
how about allowing us down to the basement so I can introduce my bride to the rest of our backwards family?
Kanaya's eyebrows shoot up under her hairline and her eyes snap back towards John, before turning back to you with a barely perceptible look of uncertainty.
Are you sure you want to take him down there, Dave?
No, you are not sure. In fact, if you were being honest, you were completely unsure. This bar, its basement area in particular, might be like a second home to you. But you grew up tougher than John did. Your taint has always been with you, unlike his, which literally sprang at him from nowhere. He's not used to this world, and he looks uncomfortable even up here on the upper level where it's safe. But at the same time, what choice do you have? He'll waste away into nothing if you keep going on like this. As it is, he's like an empty shell of egg derp, much like a fruit gusher with all the juice let out. He's barely your John anymore, and it's killing you as much as it's killing him. It's a strong testament to your common sense and problem-solving abilities that the only solution you can think of is introducing him to a bunch of trolls who are angry and relatively violent on a good day. But John needs people. Companionship. He's like an elderly person whose life is relatively pointless, so they adopt like 1,000 fucking cats and a fish. Since his friends are no longer an option, the only choice is to introduce him to your friends. It just so happens that none of them are human. Well, you have one human friend, but that's a slippery slope and you've almost tumbled down it several times yourself. Definitely not something to drag John into. So despite your own misgivings, you give Kanaya the deadpan to trump all previous deadpans, and raise an eyebrow as if to say, "You're questioning me? You're questioning me?" She doesn't look impressed, and she gives John another skeptical look, but she nods, granting you the visual acceptance to bring someone new into the hidden basement of the bar. The secret safe haven for all those reviled by society. As you slide off the stool and nod for John to follow you, you're again plagued with doubts and fears, and is this really the only fucking thing you can think of doing? But it is. It really is. And that in itself is ridiculously tragic.